Come join me on a small homestead as we harvest, cook, and garden. Our beautiful mulberry tree is producing heaps of mulberries, so we're just harvesting a lot so that we can make some jam and, of course, eat. The problem sometimes is trying to get the berries before the birds get them, and we have a lot of birds. I ended up with 5 cups for jam, which I didn't take a video of me making, but it was my first time and it came out really good and we loved it. Whenever I see the cream on clearance at the shops, I always grab all of them and just stick them in my freezer because I know I'm going to want to make butter out of it. I just pull it out, let it defrost, and then whip it all up. You'll have a jar for buttermilk. I have a bowl for cold water, some salt because I like to salt mine, and my little flat spatula. So you just keep blending it until you can see a clear separation of the butter from the buttermilk. And when you see that clear separation, we're just going to separate down the buttermilk. And now I always use a sieve because some of the butter will go into your buttermilk otherwise. And that way I can just catch little pieces of butter. And just try to squish out all of the buttermilk that you can out of it and put it into a little container. And you can use that buttermilk to marinate some chicken. It will help to soften it. You can use it in your oatmeal instead of using like milk. Or you can also just add it into your baked goods. I like to add a bit of salt at this time into my butter. I blend it some more just to try and get rid of any more buttermilk that might be in my butter. Afterwards, scoop it all out and put in some ice cold water. At least that's how I've been doing it, and I just kind of squish it. I've done this a few times and it seems to work pretty well. I like to weigh afterward just to see how much butter I've gotten. So out of this one, you'll see I got 272 grams out of my 600 mils. And then I did a second batch and I got even more, but that would be because I scraped all of the extra butter out of my container. And then the final bit is just shaping it, which is kind of the funnest bit, I think. I love shaping it. Wrap it up in some parchment paper, put the date on it, and then I put it in a Ziploc bag and I stick mine in the freezer until I'm ready to use. You can just put it straight into the fridge if you're going to use it right away. And voila, that's it. You got buttermilk and butter. I haven't weeded the garden in a while, so I thought it was high over time to weed the garden. And one of my cabbages has obviously been nibbled on, so I'm going to give that to the chickens. I always just strap my little bubba on my back, and we just go out to the garden and we'll weed. And throw it for the chickens, who are more than happy and grateful, as you can see. And they get lots of extra greens that way. And I get lots of extra eggs. So it works well for the both of us. Something I'm super excited for is we are going to be getting bees.
The sections together with their wax, which I have seen where they have to work their eyes to get them apart.
So we got a flow hive, which I'm super excited about, which my husband has built and has just waterproofed the outside of it. So he had to sand it and waterproof it several times with some tung oil. But it seems kind of flimsy. So what he was trying to say is he thinks that the bees will then have to kind of stick it together. Like that's what they do with their normal hives. So we will see how it works and hopefully it will work well. The next thing I really wanted to do today was make some fermented ketchup. So I just got 2 tablespoons of the whey, which was from the homemade yogurt. Just scooped 2 tablespoons of whey out of it. I added about 1.5 cups of some organic tomato paste that I have. I added 1/3 cup of water. That's just my whey that I've already done just before. Afterwards, I would just add about 3 tablespoons of rapadura sugar. I really love rapadura sugar. It's a more natural sugar, and it tastes similar to your brown sugar or coconut sugar. I then added 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with the mother in it. It just has the good extra bacteria in it. And I just add some ground black pepper. I don't really measure. I just kind of twist it a bit in there. And then I have this beautiful allspice that I really am enjoying using. And I used about 1/2 teaspoon of that one. And then about another 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. And just mix it all together. Okay, just a little bit. And whenever I am in the kitchen, you're going to see one of my kids in there wanting to help me, mostly my son. He just loves helping to cook everything and anything, which is completely fine. Give it a good mix, and I just put it into a jar and put the lid on securely and put that away in a nice cool area to ferment for about 2 or 3 days. So I've never actually tried fava beans before. My husband planted a whole bunch in our garden. And we have them here. I'm going to be harvesting a whole bunch in the near future. So it's just a pod like this accidentally broke one of the plants, so I thought, oh, let me have a look at the pod and open it up. I'm looking at recipes on how we can cook them and use them. Oh, those are the pods. They're quite nice and fat and big. From what I was reading, you can eat them small like that and just eat them. Or there's this skin, I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a white skin. I wonder if I can peel it off. That when you cook it for a minute from what I've seen in boiling water, and then you throw it into cold water, and then this skin, you can see how it's like darker green here, and there's this lighter green skin. Apparently the bean will pop right out, and then that's the part you use. So I can't wait to do that. I'm gonna do a big harvest of this probably in another day or two, but I just wanted to get on here and show you, as I was very excited about fava beans, and this would be our first time like utilizing them. So I took the skin off, so that was the skin here, just to show you. It's a lot easier if you're gonna boil it first in the bean pod, so it just broke in half. If you ever used it, feel free to share some recipes with me. I'd love to know, and I'll probably do another video later on just with things that we've tried, but really exciting. So something I want to show you. The last thing I wanted to do was make a shepherd's pie for dinner. So I just chopped up some onion and mushroom, seasoned it with some salt, put it in my cast iron pan, which I preheat. And I just like to pre-season it, so I season it with garlic powder and pepper, as you saw before, and just heat it up until it's nice and soft. The next thing I do is add my mince. So I had a whole kilo of ground beef, which I just add straight into it and cook it up, and I'll add more spices like salt, pepper, garlic powder. I generally like to add a bit of paprika. You'll see me throw in a few bay leaves as well. Afterwards, you want to probably add about a cup of homemade bone broth, or any broth that you have. I have a cup that I already made of bone broth, and several tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce for this size. And then I just let that cook all together. I throw in probably about a whole cup of some frozen mixed veggies, just to add a bit of more veggies into it. And I like to add tapioca flour to thicken it up a bit. So I like to add, it's normally about 3 to 4 tablespoons of tapioca flour, and I cook it up until I see it's thickened, and throw it into a casserole dish. Next up, I just chopped up about 7 medium-sized potatoes. I had my water already pre-boiling, so it gets nice and hot. And I'm going to do the mashed to go on top, and I throw about a tablespoon of salt. I use fine sea salt for this. And I'll just heat that up and let it get nice and soft. Strain the water, mash it all up. I like to add some milk, some butter, some salt, some garlic powder, and just throw that straight into your shepherd's pie. You'll see that afterward I just like to smooth it out, and then I'll put a bit of melted butter on top and stick it in the oven at about 200 degrees until it just kind of gets a bit brown on top. And that was all I did. And we had a delicious dinner and some leftovers. I just ended the day spending some time together outside, playing with the kids, watching them play, and they always like to watch the chickens as well. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.